Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show on a Wednesday morning. We all remember the old saying from the line actually that came out of The Wizard of Oz, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, right? Well, there might be a new reason to say lions and tigers and bears, and oh my, it might be doing some good for some of the bravest among us, especially those who are coming home from serving overseas, veterans. We talk so much about how many returning veterans are suffering from things like PTSD and other issues. We just saw a veteran who was found guilty of killing the American sniper, Kyle, and his partner. And a lot of questions about the mental makeup of this gentleman. And he came home and the things that really affected him. Well, we have a gentleman with us this morning who has been working with people for a long time. Veterans who are coming back from overseas. His name is Kevin Rose. Kevin has a whole lot of different titles here, from massage therapist, diploma certified craniosacral therapist. He's logged over 25,000 hours of clinical practice in the field of complementary manual therapies. We're going to find out more about that in a moment. He's formerly the director of intensive programs and clinician at the world-renowned Upledger Institute. And he's developed numerous programs to help facilitate and integrate self-healing capabilities. As a professional speaker, a trainer, he maintains a clinical practice. And he focuses on improving the physiological structure and function, empowering individuals to achieve wellness. And I don't think any of us would begrudge wellness to our heroes who walk among us and our heroes who come back home. And so many times they are suffering from wounds that you cannot see, rather that are inside. So we welcome this morning our very special guest, Kevin Rose. Kevin, great to have you on the Gary Sutton Show. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary. How are you this morning?
I am very, very well. Thank you for asking. So I said lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. That wasn't too far off, right?
Not too far, no.
Now, how are you using, first of all, I guess I want to ask you, physiological. That's one of those 50-cent words that a lot of people say, what? Huh? Tell us a little bit about physiological, and tell us a little bit also about the complementary kind of work that you do. I think it's, I'm trying to think of the exact name it's called here, but the complementary programs that you really kind of get involved with in here.
Certainly, Gary. First of all, physiological is really just the whole human, all right? It's everything combined, emotional, mental, physical, everything combined. And I've been a massage therapist for 20 years. So logging so many hours working with people, I deal with stress all day long. Everybody that shows up, one of the first things they say is, I'm totally stressed out. And I found that over the years, when I work with people, I'm not just working with their physical body. I'm also listening to their stories. I don't encourage people to talk, but I call massage therapists the new bartenders of the 21st century, because
okay.
we hear all the stories. But the thing about it is, as I work with people physically, whenever they begin speaking about their stories, their muscles will tighten up. So there's obviously a link between what we think and what we feel. And my goal has been, as a therapist over the years, is just to help people learn how to use that combination, use the combination of thinking and feeling to relax and find balance.
Now, I can think of nothing that would be more stressful than if you have a veteran who you're using massage therapy on, who starts to talk about their experiences maybe overseas in Afghanistan or Iraq or other places as well. And I would suspect that probably that happens with them a lot more than maybe even a lot of other people, right?
Well, they have particular situations. If you think about it, when we engage the environment around us, we're using all of our senses, right? That's
right.
How we take in all the information. And we do that all day long. But what happens is when we are put, when we are put in an intense situation, there's something called the fight or flight mechanism that kicks in as a survival mode. And what that is, it's an aspect of the sympathetic nervous system that jumps in to help us recognize when we're in danger. And, the heavy breathing, the rapid heartbeat, feelings of anxiety. So when we're in this intense situation, that sympathetic nervous system fight or flight mode kicks in high gear. Well, it also, at the same time, heightens our senses. And as humans, what happens is when we get done with this situation, we actually stay in that fight or flight response. We kind of get locked into that. And what I see with veterans is the same thing I see with someone that's been in a traumatic car accident or had a traumatic childhood. That fight or flight system gets stuck. And so with the program that I do with the animals, what happens is we heighten the senses, but we heighten the senses in a relaxed state. So it becomes a counterbalance to that heightened, intense state. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. That, and in other words, you're also kind of getting their senses to kind of transfer over to something that is more pleasurable or excited than something which is negative and excited. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, when you have that counterbalance, when you have the ability to recognize that you have an option and you have the ability to recognize how you can use your built-in tools, the senses, to help you, then, that is very empowering, because when you're in a moment of stress, you can actually use that stress to cue you to use the sensory awareness exercises that I teach to bring that fight or flight response down, almost instantaneously.
Now, counseling and therapy, we hear an awful lot about those for returning veterans, but, so many times, and again, I use the example of this Eddie Lee Routh, who was just sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole for the killing of Chris Kyle, the American sniper. And a lot has been said about him and his mental state and so forth. And we look out there and we say, okay, and again, not to excuse what he did at all, but we look at the invisible wounds that are inside these people, especially who are coming home and from the theaters of war. And maybe just counseling and therapy don't work by themselves. So talk a little bit about how you have used this idea of wild animals specifically to try to get these people a little bit more aware in a way that is more relaxing.
Absolutely. So, when men and women receive military training, they're taught to be self-sufficient. They're taught to basically suck it up, and move through whatever situation they have to. And, of course, they need to be taught that to save their lives, to keep them safe. However, we're not, as a society, very good about teaching how to come down from that. And as a result, what happens is what I see often, military veterans, they don't want to ask for help because it makes them feel, I don't really.
It's not how they're wired. That's not how they've been taught. Yeah.
That's right. So what I decided to do with the wild animals is create a program where, again, I can teach them how to tune into the senses and how to bring that stress level down. And when you're face-to-face with a tiger or a mountain lion or a bear, oh my, right, it puts things in perspective. You're not the top of the food chain anymore. So
you're on the visiting team.
That's right. That's right. But that experience, what happens is it creates, being that close to that big of an animal, it creates a lot of awe and wonder. And you get in this almost like a childlike state because it's so cool. But when you're in that state, that's when I teach the sensory awareness exercises. And so it allows you to recognize that when you're stressed, you can bring that stress level down. So what I do is I teach just these basic exercises, and then we don't work inside the cage, we work through the cages. But I'll have the participant bring something stressful to their mind and really begin to feel it in their body. I don't ask details.
Right.
Sometimes people tell me details, but I don't ask any details. But what happens is as they begin to feel that stress and experience that stress, they get to watch the animal in front of them mirror what they're feeling. So if they get agitated or frustrated, they get to watch that animal get agitated and frustrated. And then I teach, again, the sensory awareness exercises that help them ground into the present moment, and they get to watch the animal calm.
What would be an example of one of those exercises that you would use there? So let's say I'm a guy returning home, and I'm sitting there with you, and I'm watching a tiger in front of me inside a cage, not very far away from me. What would be a sensory exercise you would use?
Well, one of the main sensory exercise I use is really just having them tune into their senses. So if we pay attention to things all day long,
right.
But if we focus on all 5 senses at the same time, what happens is it really just takes the mental cycle, that cyclical thinking process, out of the equation, and lets you focus right in on the present moment. So I'll have them wiggle their toes, and I'll have them smell the smells around them, listen to the sounds of the environment, look at that tiger, for instance, and look at the colors, taste whatever the taste is in their mouth. So it's very, very simple. I just have them really focus on their senses. And when that happens, that cyclical thought process, it just stops. And when you bring yourself into the present moment like that, it's incredibly freeing and creates just immediate peace.
Now, you said the cyclical thought process, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong on this, where you're thinking about the bad thoughts over and over and over again. Is that basically it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even bad thoughts. I mean, you get up in the morning, everything we do, just about every conscious physical action we take begins with a thought, correct?
Right, exactly.
So when I get out of bed in the morning, I hit the ground running. So I'm thinking, I got to get my daughter to school, I got to do this, I got to do that. That's the cyclical thought process, and it just goes on and on and on all day. Now, it's necessary in order to accommodate things, but if you have a situation that you've experienced that is intense, what happens is it creates this underlying tension. And so the cyclical thought processes of the day are just stacked on top of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I want to go a little further, though. So what do you want them to take away from the experience of being right there in front of that, and I'm assuming they're right there in front of real caged animals? What do you want them to walk away being able to do? And then I would assume that you follow up on this again. Is there like a step 2, 3, 4, 5, or is it just a continuous kind of barrage of this kind of thing where they can eventually do it on their own?
Well, it's what I want them to walk away with, and what they do walk away with, is to recognize that they're not reliant on anything outside themselves to bring that stress level down. So when I teach the sensory exercise, it really empowers them to recognize, look, I have the inherent tools to do this. I follow up and, check in, and inevitably, I would say probably 98% of the people I've worked with have the ability to recognize when they're stressed, and the ability to recognize how to change it. Now, the ability to recognize and the ability to change it is an option. All right, you have a choice. You can choose to do that or not. But what happens is I'll hear, I started getting stressed out, and I started thinking about being in front of that tiger, or I started thinking about what that monkey was doing in the cage. And what happens is there's mental cues created. So when they get stressed, they'll think about that, and it helps them begin to calm. So
they become kind of mental triggers for good reaction in a much better way. We're going to come back, Kevin. I want to ask you a little bit more about this and some more of the things that you're doing out there as we want to recognize and change. And for many coming home, the experiences they saw overseas are not anything that many of us could ever understand right now, and certainly a lot to have to deal with. Some of the invisible wounds that we talk about here. When we come back, we'll have Kevin Rose right back here on the Gary Sutton Show and find out more about his animal therapy and what are the results so far. Is it working well with a lot of these veterans? We'll get more information from Kevin when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Our special guest this morning is Kevin Rose, who is helping veterans who are coming back with a certain kind of therapy, a type of complementary manual therapy, to teach them how to kind of heal some of the invisible wounds that people get in war. Kevin, talk a little bit about what has been the reaction so far by a lot of the people that you've been able to help, and what you've been doing, just to kind of recap here, is to put these people in front of tigers and bears and all that kind of thing. First of all, what's their reaction the first time they're put in front of these huge animals like this?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely
awe-inspiring, to be quite honest. I mean, how often do you get to stand in front of a tiger or a mountain lion or a black leopard? And
fortunately, 0 times so far without a cage in front of me. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not the same as being with a horse or a dog. Those are great things. But it's, it gives you this perspective.
And I think we lost Kevin there. We're going to try to get him back right away. Somehow we lost him on the line. So, Kevin, are you still there? We'll give him a call right back and rehook up there. But, interesting therapy here, because what Kevin's talking about is you're associating with the behavior of an animal. And the whole idea of what I want to get to here when we get Kevin back on is the idea of, okay, how do you associate? In other words, you're watching how an animal behaves, how they react to certain things. Kevin said, turning on all of your senses to the environment around you. And so how do we transfer what an animal is feeling over to what we're feeling? And Kevin, somehow we lost you there. I apologize. I think we have you back now.
Yep. Are you here?
Yeah, gotcha. So I guess the question I'm looking for an answer to is, okay, so they're sitting there in front of these awesome animals, and you say, okay, how do you transfer the feelings over that you talked about later on when they're thinking about a certain thing, and then they come back and they say, okay, I remember what that gorilla did, or I remember what that bear did, or I remember what that tiger did. How does that transference process occur there?
Well, when I have them bring up the stressful thought, as I am with the animal, right, it really creates perspective. So, things happen that are incredibly stressful in our lives, and we can ruminate on them forever and try to make sense of them, but chances are a lot of times they just don't make sense. So what happens is when we're in with the animals, I have them bring up the stress, but I also teach them in that moment to use their senses to take them out, again, of that cyclical thinking into the present moment. And that's the real key, because when we're in our thought process and going around and around, we're not in this moment. We're somewhere else. And so what happens is it basically just kind of reconditions that thought process and the stressful way of being into the present moment. So it takes the charge off the situation.
So you're working with the imagination. You're working a little bit. I've studied some psycho-cybernetics over the years. You're getting to that where you're kind of helping to program the mind a little bit. This is not hypnotism by any means, but you're programming the mind a little bit with some better thoughts to use or some methods to use and some visualization that's going on there, right?
Right, and it just takes the sting off of the thought. It doesn't make it disappear. It doesn't make your memory disappear. It just takes the edge off of it. And when you can get some kind of relief from that edge, the rest of the body really, really loves it.
What has been your reaction so far for the veterans you've been able to help?
So far, it's been pretty incredible. I've done the process. I've done the program for about 6 years, and I started out with friends and family and coworkers, and then they sent their friends, and I was just testing it before I really made it available. I've had about 5 veterans, combat veterans, come through the program in the past month or so, and their reaction is pretty incredible because I don't offer it as therapy. It's just an experience. I'm just going for a walk in nature, and I'm going to teach them how to use their inherent skills to really calm their nerves. And that's the response. There's a couple of testimonials on my website of veterans that have gone through the program already. And it's, because of the response with just, the general public, veterans are not any different, right? They're just people. And it's just their response is the same. It's been really great. I think I've had maybe 3 people out of the 200 that I've taken through the experience that didn't really, I won't say enjoy it, but didn't really take as much away from it.
Now, again, for people in general that are sitting here going, hey, how do I eliminate stress? You do have actually a website, and you've got an instructional guide on there, how to eliminate stress in 20 seconds or less, right?
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That is basically what I've been telling you about with the senses. I put this in a informative manual just so people could have some kind of a reference point. And basically all that is, I walk you through the steps of engaging the senses, of bringing something stressful to mind, and then learning how to engage the senses to take that edge off of that stress. So it's really the foundational part of the Catalyst, and it's a foundational part of my practice as well.
And the name of this program is the Catalyst Program, Catalyst. And you could also check out the website at Catalyst, Catalyst, refuge.com, and get the free instructional guide as well. And you enter your name and your email and address in the pop-up box on the homepage to immediately receive the guide. Kevin, it's been fascinating hearing about this morning. Again, I think anything we can do to help the heroes who walk among us, we do in this country. And thank you for what you're doing to help make their return home a little bit easier.
Listen, Gary, thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I think we all have to do whatever we can to just help create more peace where we live.
Kevin, couldn't agree with you more. Thanks again, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thanks, Gary.
Take care. Kevin Rose with us on the Gary Sutton Show. Again, that website, catalystrefuge.com. CATALYSTREFUGE, all one word, .com. And you can check it out, what he's doing with this Catalyst program to help veterans.